Welcome, everyone. So excited to have you here with us today. And I'm really grateful to be talking with Ariel Curry. And Ariel is a writer and ghostwriter and editor, and she wears a lot of different hats, podcaster, all the things. And so we're really excited to have you here with us. Thanks for joining us, Ariel.
Thank you for having me. Thanks so much for asking me. I really appreciate it. And for
Oh,
book.
yes, yes. We have, for our listeners who are tuning in, Ariel has a book coming out, and she's going to be doing a follow-up teaching to this interview about how to map out our book. So we're so excited. We get like a double dose, and we're grateful for you and thankful for you to be here with us. So, before we get started, I gave you a short intro, but tell us a little bit more about you and what you do.
This is interesting timing because I was telling Kara that I just started a new job yesterday. So I'm a little bit in a transition period right now. I was an acquisitions editor for almost a decade. And then for the last 3 years, was running my own business as a ghostwriter, helping authors pitch their proposals, and did doing developmental editing. And that was just a good move, for my family, for my career, my peace of mind, my mental wellness, all of those things. And then an exciting opportunity just opened up. And so I just started yesterday a new position. I'm a senior acquisitions editor again now at Source Books, which is a publishing company just outside of Chicago. So I am going to be acquiring general trade nonfiction for them. And I'm really excited about starting that again, kind of a return to acquisitions, which is a big part of my love and, passion for books is kind of bringing them to a large audience. So that is what I do. And it's also kind of nice timing for this conversation because I'm just getting back into that proposal mindset and now evaluating proposals. I have been for the last 3 years, writing proposals for authors. So I totally know the pain of that process and having gone through it many times myself and pitching on behalf of authors and helping them get book deals and everything. And now I'm kind of sitting on the other side of that desk where I get to evaluate the proposals that are coming in.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your new position. It's kind of a new old thing for you. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. And I appreciated that you just said you understand the pain of writing a book proposal. I am experiencing that personally right now. So, yeah, I guess it's good to know it's supposed to be a little painful. Um, but today, yeah, I wanted to kind of talk to you more about that whole process of writing a book proposal, why it's important to do it, and who should do it. So, maybe you could tell us a little bit more, about why a book proposal? Why is it important to go through that pain of writing a book proposal? And then second to that, does everybody who desires to write a book need one?
Yeah. Um, well, I'll answer the second question first. If you are writing nonfiction, then you need one. If you are writing fiction, then you don't need one. If you're writing fiction, then fiction books are signed on the merits of the entire manuscript, and you really don't need the proposal document as it kind of its own thing. But for nonfiction books are usually pitched before the book has been written, right? You submit the proposal with some sample chapters. And so the editor has to go on kind of faith based on what you've presented in that proposal and make a decision about whether or not to offer a contract. And the reason you need to write a book proposal, if you are in that space of writing anything nonfiction, is because it's like a business plan. So an acquisitions editor is kind of like the bank making an investment into a new business. So I'm evaluating, what is the return on my investment going to be? Because, publishing companies are making significant investments. We're making an investment of whatever the advance amount is that we're offering. We're making an investment into the time that it takes from our team. We have all of these people, all of this overhead that gets invested into the process of creating your book. Um, and so we publishers kind of view the author like you're going to be an equal partner in this process. You know what we have to offer. We have, and you should always ask an acquisitions editor too, like more about what the publisher has to offer. But the acquisitions editor is kind of coming with all of the institutional systems that will support the creation and marketing and sale of the book. And you are coming with the content, and you are coming with your own platform. And those are the things that are kind of a big unknown to the publisher. The editor may be familiar with it, but the editor also has to pitch your proposal to their editorial board, which includes people from the sales team and people from the marketing team. So partly the book proposal functions as, hey, here's what I promise to do as a partner in this endeavor to publish a book together. And it is a business endeavor. And here's how I'm going to make your investment worthwhile, right? For both of us.
Mm.
And it's also a tool that your editor can use to pitch the book and advocate for you, not just at the beginning of the process in extending you a contract, but that proposal gets returned to again and again and again throughout the publishing process. I just got trained this morning on, the internal data systems for source books. And they're talking about, okay, at launch time, you're going to go back to the proposal, pull the key selling points from the proposal, put them into this space right here, and that's going to populate to Amazon. So there's all of these internal systems that publishers are using to market your book, to, feed the information to their sales teams so that their sales team can pitch it to Barnes and Noble and Target and Walmart and all the things. And so your proposal is really equipping them with everything they need to sell your book and to advocate for you.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting to know that it resurfaces, like it comes up. It's not just
Yeah.
this like get your foot in the door kind of thing, but it really is that marketing plan, just the way you would use a marketing plan in a business. It's a
Mhm.
living document, probably.
Oh, yeah.
You're returning to it often, reminding yourself as the writer, like, what did I say I was going to say?
Yes.
And am I delivering on my promises? And then it also gives you all, as the publishing house,
Mhm.
all of that information, all of that data that you need as well.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yep, that's right.
That's so, you know, even as I have been going through this process and thinking through like what I want to say in my book proposal, it's been such a helpful thing. Like, I was so intimidated by this process of this book proposal and the scope of it. It felt really, really large. And but as I've gone, it's been fun because it's become clearer and clearer in my mind. And so
Yeah.
um and it's helpful to know that nonfiction writers need it. And I'm sure you would suggest that even if you're doing a self-publish, if you're going independent, that is still a valuable tool for you as the writer. Don't you
Oh, yes.
agree?
Absolutely, because if you are self-publishing your book, then you're investing in yourself, right? So instead of a publisher giving you an advance and kind of investing all those systems, you have to invest all those systems in yourself. And so just like you, it's almost helpful to think of yourself like, would I publish this if it were from somebody else? You
Mm,
know, if
yeah.
they're, what would I expect from them if I were to, if I'm going to pay for the cover design and the interior design and the copy editing and the developmental editing and all of the things I'm going to pay to market it, what would I expect another author to do to support that work if I'm going to be investing $10,000, let's say, into this process? What do I
Yeah.
expect from someone else? Okay, those should be my expectations for myself too.
Yeah. To step out of yourself, kind of get a
Mhm.
bigger view of what you're doing. That's really a good idea. So, when I know your role has shifted recently, but when you were working with writers and you were helping them in that process of developing their own book proposal, what were some of the common pitfalls or maybe roadblocks that you kind of saw them struggle with? And do you have any like suggestions for help for writers as they go through that process?
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest thing is that mindset shift of realizing that a book proposal is a sales document and it is a business proposal and it is not um it's not that we don't care about the passion. Obviously the passion is necessary, but the passion is not necessarily going to sell books. And so it's less important to talk about how much you love this topic or you're so excited about whatever, it's so inspired. And it's more important to talk about kind of how are you going to, how are you going to make this book successful? How are you going to contribute to the process of putting this book out into the world? And again, viewing it in as that true partnership of like, I have to offer a lot to a publisher and getting really clear for yourself and thinking kind of outside the box. I think a lot of authors don't think um, about all of the stuff they really do have to offer a publisher as a partner because and I know we can talk about platform in a minute, but platform is so much bigger than social media. And I think a lot of authors don't realize, oh, it's all of the associations I'm a part of. It's all of the organizations I'm a part of. It is every single way that you plan on putting your work in front of someone. That is part of your platform. It's the network that you have. It's your friends on Instagram. All of those things make up your platform. And sometimes I see people getting super narrow, have blinders on about platform, and they're just like, oh no, my Instagram is only 5,000 people or 500 people, whatever it is,
Yeah.
or 50 people. It doesn't really matter. And I'm like, I personally don't care what your social media numbers look like. That is a small, small factor in whether or not you're going to be able to make this book successful. Because if you look at like Justin Timberlake or Billie Eilish, they have millions and millions of followers, and their books tanked.
Oh, I didn't even know they wrote books.
Right. Well, yeah, there you go. So those are my favorite non-examples of like, it doesn't necessarily matter how many followers you have on social media. So anyway, so that's one thing is thinking too narrowly about platform, uh, not understanding that this is a business proposal. Those are really the big things, I would say.
Do you feel that, I think I appreciate hearing that. And I think that's really good counsel and a good word for us. But in terms of like the content of the book itself, I know that that is often what gets like out of the gate, like that's really the toughest thing for us to like kind of formulate our idea, make sure that it's good. What do you have to say about that? Because it feels like everything under the sun is kind of out there, right? And my understanding is you don't have to come up with a whole brand new thing that's nobody's ever thought of, but kind of having your own take on something, your own perspective on something that can offer maybe new light to an older subject. Is that true? Do you think that that's accurate?
Mhm. Yeah, this is one of my co-author Liz and I love talking about the what makes a great idea for a book. What should your book big idea look like? There's a number of ways you can think about it. One of our favorites is Jeff Goins. So he always says, everybody thinks X, but the truth is Y. So whatever your topic is, how you're going to think about it is, okay, everyone in my audience, what are the assumptions that they take for granted about my topic? And then how can I help them refine that thinking? How can I help them understand something in a different way? How can I add nuance to that conversation? Or how can I straight up blow up their assumptions and tell them that they're wrong if
Oh,
they
I
are?
love that.
That's one way to think about it. The other way that I really like is from Stephanie Duncan Smith, who's an acquisitions editor at Baker Books. And she says, what is your boldest statement about the idea or the topic? So take whatever you're saying and think about how can I put a superlative on that? Like, how can I take that to the nth degree? Like, just how can I make that even more extreme? What's the like super in your face version of my idea.
Mm,
That's probably the thing that people will be more interested in. That's why you see all of these books with like the curse words and stuff on the title, because it's like it's so in your face. And as much as that might not appeal to some of our taste buds, it works, you know. And I was just looking at the sales for some of those books this morning, and I'm like, dang, those books sell. They really
mm,
sell. Like, and I'm not saying you need to do that, but I'm just saying that principle of taking your idea and going, how can I take this one step further? How can I push this idea even more extreme? Obviously, you have to balance that with integrity and truth, but how can I take it to the furthest extreme of this idea and it still
mm.
be true? We recorded a great podcast conversation with Jeff Goins about that, where we talked about like, well, how do you balance, you know, because I don't know if, are you any of you familiar with Jeff Goins?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
He likes to press buttons and he likes to kind of throw crazy ideas out there and just like see what people's reactions are. And we were like, okay, but like, how do you balance that with it still needs to be truthful? Like, you still need to be able to validate, you know, what you're saying. You still need to be able to cite sources. You still need to be able to back up what you're saying with evidence, right? So we had a really good conversation about how do you do that in a book? Like, how do you still say something extreme potentially? Not extreme, but like,
I follow that. I can really wrap my mind around that because I've I was a copywriter. I still do some copywriting, and it's being a little bit disruptive, right? Like especially when you're thinking about a headline or a title or something like that. It's the things that are a little disruptive, like the books that you reference, which with the cuss words on. Like I see those too, and I like roll my eyes when I walk by, but they caught my attention.
yep.
And so that idea is yes, like go like take your idea press it a little bit further, and that's a great, I love that tip. That's so good. So earlier you said there's the pain involved in writing a book proposal. How much time, and I know you're a pro at this and you help people write their own and you often write proposals for people. So your system is probably much more well oiled than most. But what kind of time investment do you think it would take to write a good book proposal?
So it completely depends on how advanced the author's thinking is on whatever they're wanting to say. Like, how much time have they spent honing their idea? I I would say it's very rare for an author to say, "Oh, I have this idea. I'm kind of thinking this," and then for us to be able to quickly pull together a proposal. Um, I find that, you know, the people who have been doing this or talking about this or thinking about this idea for like 10 years, yeah, those people we could knock out a proposal in like a month. And that
Okay.
would be very fast. But I would say most people need a significant amount of like pressure testing the ideas and figuring out, you know, mapping out the book like Liz and I are going to share in August, at the end of August. I always recommend, like, before you write a proposal, pressure test that idea in a number of different ways. Ryan Holiday has a quote where he says, before a book, uh, or before an idea becomes a book, it should be an article. And before an idea becomes an article, it should be a dinner conversation. And you should have that conversation many times. Practice different ways of saying your idea. Like think about, you know, pitching it to various people, get their feedback, see what they think. Again, if it's kind of busting their assumptions on something, it should catch their attention. But you'll be able to see, like, do people kind of go like, oh, well, yeah, duh, that's self-evident, and then you might not have a great idea.
Mm.
But if it is surprising to people, you might have something really cool. And then put that in the form of an article, write that in your newsletter, you know, test it in a lot of different ways first. The more writing you do about your book idea before you start actually working on the proposal, the better off you're going to be. And then if you map it out too, and you figure out, here's exactly what I want chapter 1 to look like, here's exactly what I want chapter 7 to look like, you're going to be able to pull your proposal together a lot faster when you've done all that thinking work. Because the other stuff of the proposal, besides the content, like the market analysis, the audience demographics and psychographics, the comps research, all of that stuff can be pulled together pretty quickly. It's really the content of the book itself that I find takes the most time, and it entirely depends on how long have you been thinking about this and wrestling with the ideas and testing them and thinking about all of the objections to them and what are people going to say, what questions are people going to have. And if you've really thought all those things through, then you're going to have a much easier time writing the proposal. But I know that's a really long answer. I would say typically it takes 3 to 6 months to write a really good proposal.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
a helpful gauge. And those are good qualifiers too, because yeah, so much of that internal wrestling has to happen at some point, either before you're sitting down at your computer ready to write it out, or while you're figuring it out on the fly as you're writing your book proposal. At some point you have to wrestle through all those ideas.
Yeah. I don't recommend your proposal being the first place that you've wrestled with your ideas.
Yes, like the dinner conversation and the blog posts and all of those things. That's where you can, I
Yeah.
love that idea too, because that helps you, that gives you a little sense of confidence too, that you can keep
Mhm.
going.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about platform, and I think too, like maybe some of the women here on this call can relate that writing, yes, they've got that down. They've got a good idea. The platform thing hangs a lot of us up because we've heard numbers thrown out of like how many email subscribers you need to have, how many social media followers. So, what can you say about that, especially in connection to a book proposal, and how a acquisitions editor might view you holistically, looking at all of those factors? Like how important is it to have really strong numbers, and if you don't, is there a way to like compensate for that?
Okay. So first of all, every editor thinks about platform differently. So you should never let your platform stop you from pitching something. Um, Platform expectations differ greatly depending on the genre. So if you're pitching something that is a memoir or fiction, platform really doesn't matter because we don't need we don't need the author to be on stages speaking in front of everybody in order to sell those books. Stories sell pretty well on their own. But if you are writing prescriptive nonfiction, which would include things like devotionals or Bible study guides or Christian living, things like that, then platform does matter more. I'm not going to say it's like a make or break thing, but it matters more than it would for other genres. Um, so those are a couple things to keep in mind. But even for prescriptive nonfiction, so there's like 3 things you need to make a book successful: an audience, a great idea, and great writing. And this is not from me, this is from Lucinda Halpern. You really just need 2 of those things. So if you have a truly great idea, and I don't mean a good idea, I mean a great knock your socks off idea, and you are an incredible writer, not just a good writer, you are a knock your socks off writer, you can probably sell your book. If And that's hard because all of these things are subjective. And that's kind of the point of what I'm saying too. Like all of these things are subjective. So there's no one right number. Every editor is going to have a different number of like their threshold of what they feel comfortable and what they feel confident selling. Because remember, an editor is coming at this from a business perspective. And so their jobs are on the line. Like my job is on the line. If I sign a bunch of books that do not sell well, my head is on the chopping block and I get fired. That is how that
Mhm.
works. So I, as an editor, need to be really careful. I also have a very limited budget. So I know I only have X number of dollars I can give in advances every year or whatever. There's only so much money that we have to play with. It would be nice if it was limitless, but it's not. And so I have to make decisions about how many books can I sign? I really can only take on 12, like this year, I'm signing 12 books. That's it. But I'm going to receive hundreds of proposals.
Hmm.
So editors have to make really hard choices. And they're also making choices like it's not like I get all of those, let's say I get 500 proposals. I don't get those 500 proposals at once. They're spread out throughout the entire year. So I have to make decisions about like, well, this proposal's pretty good, but what if I sign it and then I get an amazing proposal and I can't take on the amazing proposal in November because I
Hmm.
signed this like pretty good proposal in June,
Hmm.
These are
Yeah.
the decisions that editors have to make that are really hard. And it is why it's why publishing is so hard, but hopefully understanding it from like the editor's perspective, you understand a little bit of how, why these decisions are so hard. I don't know if that helps at all. It's not a
Oh, I
straightforward answer from that.
that's so interesting to me because I've not thought about it from your perspective, right? Like you're getting hundreds of proposals and you have to pick, or you get to pick 12. So to be in that top 1%
Mhm.
of the proposals,
Yeah.
that's really, I really appreciate hearing that because I think that that helps writers think differently to be like, oh, this is what I need to do. I have to sell this. It goes back to the like, be a little more disruptive, be a little bit more out there to capture that attention because time and space and money are limited for everybody. So that's really helpful.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a nuts and bolts question, but what you've mentioned a few elements that you're looking at specifically in a book proposal. Do you find that there's like a standard boilerplate template that editors are looking for in a book proposal? I've seen several with, a few, there's like the standard things that you see across the board. But do you have a template that you like and recommend, or could you tell us like what are those components you're looking for?
Yeah. Well, I have my own template that I created that I think is the best personally.
It probably is the best.
Um, but I'll tell you the way I organized mine and why. So my book proposal template has 4 sections, and these are the 4 sections that I see in every book proposal template, even though these are the elements that I see in every book proposal template. I just made them a little bit more explicit in mind. So number 1 is information about the project, and that includes the overview, that includes like the audience information, um, when is the manuscript going to be complete? How many words is it going to be? All of the like information that I need about the book itself. Then there's positioning. So positioning, I really want to know, how does your book stand out in the marketplace and what shelf does this fit on? So this is where your comp books come in, and this is where your unique selling points come in. I also want to know, the third part is uh, platform. So what are the tools that you bring to the table? We talked about them: social media, newsletter, organizations, associations that you're a part of, anything you're a member of, any, all of your endorsers, the people that you know who could help to promote the book. All of that would be included in the platform section. And then the 4th section is promotion. So if you think of part 3, platform, as here are the tools at my disposal, then part 4 is, how am I going to use all of those pieces? So how, I'm going to host webinars with my, Instagram buddy, or we're going to do Instagram lives with this person, and this person has an audience of 100,000 on Instagram. I'm going to send out, weekly newsletters previewing the book and promoting pre-orders for 3 months before my book comes out. getting pretty detailed about how you plan to support the book and how you plan to promote it. That would also be the place to list if you're working with a publicist, or if you plan to work with a publicist. That's also good to know, because you may be able to advocate for some extra advance money. If you say, I plan on using the advance money to help pay for a publicist, that would be a good argument for a higher advance, that a publisher is going to be like, oh, okay, if we give you more money, it's going to help increase the return on that money. That's an argument worth making. So then the last pieces are the sample materials. So your table of contents, annotated table of contents. So for nonfiction, I need a summary of every single chapter in the book. And I want to be able to see in those summaries for every chapter how the transformation of the book is unfolding throughout the book. So what transformation are you promising the reader, and how is it going to be delivered through every chapter of the book? And then at least a few sample chapters as well.
Do you have that template? Is that something that we can get from your website?
Yes, hold on. I don't have the link on me right at this moment, but I can get it.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. Well, there are some questions in our chat, so I'm gonna get to those. Rosemary said, as an acquisitions editor, if you have an author submitting a second book to you, do you still want another complete proposal?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
You are a New York Times bestselling author. I might be able to waive it. Like a really basic version. But if you are not, then I probably need another proposal. And even really big authors do full proposals still. It's kind of surprised me when I learned that for the first time, but yeah, I mean, even really big authors like Adam Grant still does book proposals for his books, which kind of blows my mind, because it's like, who wouldn't publish Adam Grant? But
maybe it's for himself more
I
than that.
think it is partly for himself,
Yeah.
for all the reasons we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Like, this is a really good process for you to refine your thinking too, because every book really is its own unique thing to some extent.
Yeah. Space said, she asked if you have any suggestions for agents who take memoir and will not overlook the offense of not enough email subscribers. Yeah, I don't know if she's still with us, but that's her question.
Yeah. I mean, if a literary agent says that they accept memoir, then you have to assume that they do, and that they're not necessarily caring about the email subscribers, unless they say so. I don't know of any agents who say like, oh, I won't take a memoirist unless they have a specific number of email subscribers. But I would just look for, like, in Publishers Marketplace or in the Christian Writers Marketplace, or Christian Writers Market Guide. Every literary agent listed there should say whether they accept memoir. And I would start with those people. And again, really, if an agent is excited enough about a proposal because they feel convinced by the idea and the story, then you don't need the platform for memoir.
So Space had a follow-up question, and maybe you could just kind of clarify the idea of how the agent fits into this whole puzzle. Because a writer should get a literary agent first, and then that agent goes to you with the proposal. Is that what do you mean when you say you're accepting proposals, and how does the agent work into that?
Okay. For the larger publishing houses, because there are so many proposals floating around in the universe, editors need agents to act as like an initial filter. So having an agent in itself is a good kind of stamp of approval to an editor, like, okay, it's not just like me. That said, like and at Sourcebooks, we do not just take agented proposals. We also take unagented proposals. And it totally depends on the size of the publisher and how niche the publisher is. If it's like Sourcebooks is an independent publisher, which means we're not one of the big five, we are independently owned. And so we have a lot more editorial autonomy than some of the bigger publishing houses. And a lot of the time, if you're working with a smaller independent publishing house, if it's in a pretty niche area, like I don't know that you'd say, I mean, like Baker is I would still say is like a medium-sized publisher. So they might very well accept unagented proposals. I don't actually know if they do or don't, but a lot of the publishing houses will still accept unagented proposal. It just kind of depends. And yeah, so the agent acts as your representative and pitches the book on your behalf to the editors at the publishing houses. And then the editors sift through everything they get from agents. And even that is still hundreds of proposals.
So when an agent does land a proposal on your desk, is that months? Do you wait months, weeks, months? What does that look like for the writer?
It can. Yes, it totally can. I know for like, I was just talking to an agent the other day, and he told me he's just now hearing back from editors that he pitched projects to in November. So like those
Mm,
authors have been waiting 6, 7 months, which seems crazy to me. And I know that can be really, really hard for authors to, be patient and wait through all of that. And you might have gotten a book deal by then, you know?
yeah.
Um, so it everything is so individual. Like every individual editor moves at their own pace in their own time and has their own priorities that they have to work through. So there's no like general guidelines, but usually an agent will pitch 20-ish editors at a time, and they'll do like 3 rounds. This is what agents have told me. So they'll pitch the first 20 editors, they'll wait 6 to 8 weeks, assuming let's say you get some no's and then you don't hear back from 12 of them. Then you pitch the next 20 and you do it again.
Hmm.
Wait 6 to 8 weeks, same thing happens again. And then you pitch a third time. And by that point, if no one is responding, you don't have any nibbles or, any interest, then your agent will probably have a conversation with you about like, does something need to change, or is this not working, or what?
Okay. That's helpful. That's really helpful.
But you should always ask your agent like what their process looks like, because every agent may do that a little bit differently.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're probably getting some measure of feedback too, right? Maybe your agent would also be giving you some feedback, like
Yeah.
maybe we need to shore up this area of perceived weakness in
Mhm.
your proposal.
Yeah. I mean, my agent is who told me and my co-author Liz that we needed a podcast. Well, actually, 2 people told us we needed a podcast. The first person we were like, no, we're not doing a podcast. Thank you, though. That's a great idea, but no, not for us. And then our agent was like, you guys should really have a podcast. And we were like, oh, all right. I guess we should consider that. So we did, and now we love it and we do it all the time. But so yeah, your
Interesting.
agent does have will give you input and help you figure out what the best pitch is.
Okay. So Cheryl asked a question. She said, does securing an agent mean that the author has to pay them up front? Or when do they, is it like a realtor where they get paid when you sell your proposal?
Yes, they get paid when the proposal sells. So they will get a percentage of the advance and a percentage of the royalties. Typically, that's 15%. And that's 15% of your advance, 15% of your royalties. So just keep that
Mm,
in mind.
okay. That's a lot.
Can be. Yeah, it can be. But it's also, I think agents have the hardest job in the industry. I really do. And that is like, that's the one job in this industry that I'm like, nope, I will never be a literary agent because that sounds real. It's really hard job. It's really hard because they may spend months and months and months pitching a proposal to publishers. They finally get a book deal, let's say, but then the book deal's like, a $5,000 advance or something. Not that that's bad. That's amazing. But if they're only getting 15% of that, but they've spent 100 hours on this book
Right.
for you, I mean, they're not getting a lot of money.
Right. Yeah. They must really believe in the project if they go to that sort of time and effort.
Yeah, exactly.
So I cheated a little bit and asked Ariel this question beforehand, but if you're at a point where your book proposal is done and you're ready to look for an agent, is this publisher's marketplace the place that you would recommend going? And I know there's a fee associated with that, or is there some workarounds for that as well?
So the first place that I recommend looking is in the acknowledgments of your comp books. So as part of the proposal, you will do some analysis of your complementary/competing titles, right? The other books like yours that are selling really well in the marketplace. And I would look at in the back of those books, there's an acknowledgement section. The author should thank their literary agent. Always, always, always thank your literary agent. It's just like an etiquette thing.
That's a
Always
good form. Yeah.
good at etiquette. Always thank your publishing team and your literary agent. Um, so they should have their agent listed and named in the back of the book in the acknowledgments. And so you can start there because obviously those people publish books like yours and they take on and they represent and they know how to advocate and they have a successful track record of selling books like yours. So to you, I mean, that's evidence that this person knows how to sell books like yours, and that's going to be the best people for sure. Um, Second place to look would be Publishers Marketplace. Again, look for I would, and it is a paid subscription, so know that, but you can get it for just like a month or whatever and make your list, make a spreadsheet of like, okay, here's all the people that I'm going to pitch. And you can just go in Publishers Marketplace and search for your topic. So
Hmm.
Bible study, and all of the literary agents who represent Bible studies and who have signed Bible study deals are going to come up. The one caveat to Publishers Marketplace to keep in mind is that it's self-reported data. So when I sign a book, like as an acquisitions editor, I need to go into Publishers Marketplace and enter that information in order for them to have that data. Some editors, like I know this editor has signed 15 books in the last year, but in Publishers Marketplace, they only had time to report 4 of them.
Hmm.
So it's not always an accurate depiction of what's actually getting signed, but it is the best picture of what's getting signed that we have.
Okay, that's helpful. I love the tip about opening up your comp book titles and looking for agents there. So that's really helpful.
Space, yes, Publishers Marketplace is a broad view of the entire publishing industry, and Christian Writers Market is specifically to Christian authors. However, I don't think Christian Writers Market reports on deals. I think they just have, it's just like a database. It's just like a directory.
Yeah, and Carrie had a question as well. How do you figure platform number wise in writing as a contributing author for an online publication? Yeah, so if she's writing for an online publication that has a much larger readership of 6 million, how does that, I mean, that obviously bodes well.
Yes, and I would include that. I would say something like list that, have that as a bullet point, like contributing writer to whatever that publication is, and sub bullet point, their readership is 6 million, anything else about them that you want to include. And then just say how often you're contributing for them. Because if you're like, oh, I'm a contributing writer, but I've only contributed like twice in the last year, like, all right, that will weigh less than someone who's like, I write for them once a week. then it's like, oh, okay, obviously, like your work is definitely going to get in front of those 6 million eyeballs or 12 million eyeballs. So that's just something to think about too, is it's amazing if you are a contributing writer for that. And also just say how often, because that's going to be my first question as an editor. Like, well, how often do you write for them?
Right. Very good. Yeah, monthly, she said. Okay. Very good.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, yeah, Rosemary, would you like to tell us a little bit about what the book mapping workshop is going to look like? Because I know we don't have our materials yet,
Yeah.
but we will prior to that. So,
Yeah. So, the book mapping workshop is organized in 3 parts, and we're going to try to go as fast as we can. So there won't be a lot of time for, because usually this book mapping, I mean, if I do it one-on-one with someone, it's like 8 weeks. It's a really comprehensive process. We're basically going to be laying out, here are all the principles, here are the things you need to know. And then after the workshop, you can go and apply those principles for your own book. So the more pre-work that you want to do, if you want to fill out the workbook ahead of time, if you want to read part 2 of the Hungry Authors book ahead of time, that is going to be super helpful in just priming your brain. You can come ready with questions and you'll be able to get a lot deeper with it, and we'll be able to take it deeper too. But we are organizing it around kind of the 3 basic parts of book mapping, which are number 1, figuring out your transformation tale, which you'll find out what that is. Number 2, deciding your book structure. And number 3, deciding your chapter structures. So those are kind of the 3 pieces of what we'll be talking about. And so we'll spend about, because it's an hour and a half workshop. So we'll spend about 30 minutes talking about each one of those.
okay. So, and we already know who's coming because we've all
Yeah.
pre-purchased your book, but is it helpful? Like, should participants have like, it's probably helpful to have an idea, right? That maybe do a little pre-homework in preparation for that to kind of
Yeah.
to put that
And
into practice.
even if you want to like email me ahead of time and tell me like what genres are represented by all of you, like we have 3 people writing memoir and we have 7 people writing, prescriptive nonfiction. That is also really helpful for us so that we know where to spend, because we can cover all of that. But if we know like, oh, we should really spend more time on prescriptive nonfiction, let's say, then that's going to help us use our time wisely too.
Yeah, we will definitely get that information to you beforehand.
Yeah.
So
Our book is the publication date is August 6th.
yeah, and then we'll have those to you. They'll come to me, and then I'm going to ship them out to you all ahead of that um, workshop.
Yay.
So we have a few minutes left. If there's any other questions, feel free to unmute.
So I just went to the link that you shared and I signed up for the book proposal 7 emails, 7-day email collection. And I was wondering, how does that work in conjunction with your book mapping? Do you
So
book map first and then you do your proposal, or okay?
yes, you should book map first, because the book map is really just about figuring out the content of the book. So if you do the book mapping process first, that is going to force you, just like we were talking about at the beginning, it's going to force you to make a lot of decisions for your book. It's going to force you to think through a lot of the ideas. The book mapping process in and of itself is a way to pressure test all of your ideas. And so if you go through the book mapping process first, then you will know exactly what needs to go in like the annotated table of contents. You will also know like your transformation tale is exactly what you should put in the overview of your book proposal. So figure that out first, and then take all of the stuff we talk about or you figure out from your book map and use that to create your book proposal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, a space. Oh, yay. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ariel? This has been really great, really practical, helpful, timely. How can we follow your work, Ariel?
Um, you could sign up for my newsletter. So if you sign up for the book proposal, the 7-day book proposal course, you'll be on it. You can also go, I actually just
Okay.
recently switched my newsletter to Substack. So you could also just go directly to arielcurry.substack.com and sign up directly there. But that is definitely the best way. That's where I pour all of my energy every week. I send out a newsletter Friday mornings, usually around 7 a.m. Eastern. And that's the big place where I do everything. So usually I write like an original article or tell a story from my life or something at the beginning. And then I include links to helpful resources and podcast interviews, things like that, at the end.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we'll definitely grab a hold of your template. I'm interested in that for sure. And your Substack as well. And those who have pre-ordered will get to see you again in August. So that's exciting. Well, thank you, Ariel, so much for your time and your expertise and shedding a lot of light on this topic for us. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And yeah, feel free to email me if you have any specific questions or yeah.
Yeah, and what email would you through your website?
Yeah, Ariel at arielcurry.com. I'll put it in the chat here. That is the best way.
All right. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Ariel, for being here.
Yeah, thank you everyone.
Have a
Have a
good
good
day.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.